Okay, we're Masechet Eruvin. We're going to do 62 and 63. We'll get a head start because we're going to miss for for the holiday. And where we began the sixth Perek, Mishnah taught that when you're making an Eruv Chatzerot, you need everyone's participation. And if there's even one non-Jew who lives in the courtyard with you, that is a problem because he is not going to share his courtyard. He's not joining with the meal, and he's not sharing the courtyard. And so if his share is not there with everybody else's, then he can prevent all the other Jews in the courtyard from being able to carry. So that's a problem. And according to Tanakama, which is Rabbi Meir, even one Jew and one non-Jew, it doesn't matter how many. Okay, so here's this is Rabbi Meir. You need to make it. So this is Rabbanan. This is what their position is based on. They say en eruv mo'il b'mkom goy. That's number one. Ve'en bitul reshut mo'il b'mkom goy. And a non-Jew cannot give you the right. This is different from a Jew, like a Sadducee or a Samaritan. A Jew can say, you know what, I relinquish my right, and you could just use it. But that does not work for a non-Jew. A non-Jew, ad sheyaskir. A non-Jew, you have to make a business deal, and he has to rent to you that area, that the right to use that property. Begoy lo mogad, and the problem is that generally a non-Jew is not going to be willing to rent out his property to the Jews, to rent out the courtyard, and therefore it's going to be impossible to do it. I mean, if he does rent it out, then that's fine, which is what we do today. So, but generally not. And as well, but I think, yes, what I said yesterday, what I think this is going on here is that this halacha is trying to encourage Jewish communities to all live in one place and have a homogeneous area and not be influenced by outside influences. And so, yes, you can live wherever you want, but if you want to be able to carry and have a convenient Shabbat, then that's going to encourage people to live near each other, and it actually works. It happens today.
Where are you now? On 60 or 61?
61.
61.
61B.
61. The second son. Okay. When did you do 61? Yesterday?
I did yesterday. Yeah, I wanted to get ahead to miss a day. Okay,
so
my Tama. We can start here, right? So, what's the reason? Why will a non-Jew not be willing to rent out his property to a Jew? That's the question, right? What's the problem? If you think that the non-Jew says, you know what, if I rent it out to him, then he's going to come, he's going to want to live here, he's going to want to take it, and so he doesn't want to give even an inch because he is afraid that the Jews are going to come and try to take possession of it, right? He doesn't trust that the Jews are just going to carry there for 24 hours. He thinks that he's going to take advantage and then, start moving his furniture in. Okay, well, that reason makes sense according to the opinion that says for this rental has to be a full-fledged rental. You have to have a real agreement, and so I could really come and and move in to your property. Then that you have to be afraid of that. But according to the other opinion that says you only need a symbolic rental. It's not a real rental. It's not the kind you could really bring to court and actually move in. So then he shouldn't have to worry that the Jew's going to actually move into his property. So then, why would the non-Jew object? Okay, before we answer the question, we're just going to get into that machloket because we're just first introducing it. So let's see, what is the machloket?
This is pertinent to selling your hametz on Pesach.
Exactly, right. What kind of, exactly.
Could it be nonsense or could that have to be real?
Precisely. Those are the two opinions. Rav Chisda says you need a real sale. And so for him, you could understand the problem. According to Rav Sheshat, no, it's just a symbolic sale. So then he should not have any problem with it. Okay, we're going to have two definitions of what that means. What is re'o'ah? My re'o'ah, my biri'ah. Ilema biri'ah bifruta, re'o'ah pachot mishaveh piruta. A real sale is when I give the person at least the smallest denomination of a piruta to rent it. And re'o'ah means even less. Just give him like, a handkerchief or something that, a piece of something that is barely worth, is not even worth the smallest denomination. So that's not a real rental. Hold on, but does anybody think that doing a transaction with a non-Jew with less than a piruta is a problem? For a Jew, it is a problem. Any transaction between two Jews, we say nobody cares about it less than a piruta, and so therefore that's nothing. But for non-Jews, they do consider that a significant amount, and they do care about that amount, and therefore you can make a transaction with non-Jews. And here's the proof. Says, listen, you can rent from a non-Jew even for less than the value of a shaveh piruta. Amazing. The 7 laws of Bnei Noach, they are punishable, and they all have the same punishment, which is a death penalty, even for stealing. And so that means if a non-Jew steals even less than a piruta, it's still considered an act of stealing and still have that punishment. Even though for a Jew, it would not be, because for a Jew, they say, we don't even care about that much. And also, you can't return it. If a Jew steals something, they can return it, and that way make teshuvah. But for a non-Jew, does not have that principle. So this, you see that even this small amount is considered punishable. It's considered a real amount, and therefore you can't say that the difference between a real sale and a symbolic sale is more than a piruta, less than a piruta, because that distinction does not apply to transactions with non-Jews. These are funny words. These come from Persian words. You can tell they sound like Persian words. So when they're talking about a real sale, that is with legal documents. You're going to a court official, you notarize it. And a fake sale, symbolic sale, is when you don't make it official. You just scribble something on the back of an envelope, and you say, okay, you agree to this, fine. That's all you need. Okay, so now back to our original question that Tanakama says, actually everybody agrees, you cannot make an eruv with a non-Jew in the property, because they will not be willing to rent it out. Well, that makes sense according to the one that says it's a real rental, and then he's afraid that the Jew's going to come and move in to his own property. But if it's just a symbolic one, that note on the back of an envelope is not going to be useful for anything. He doesn't have to worry that the Jew is really going to come in and take over his property. So, Michael Memad, then what's the problem? Why would the non-Jew object? And why wouldn't there be why it should be okay to make an eruv with a non-Jew? Still, the non-Jew will be afraid of a witchcraft. Apparently, in order to do witchcraft on someone, you need to own their property. You need to have some ownership there. And even if it's just a symbolic ownership, that is enough to do some voodoo. And so the non-Jew, I don't know who's believing it, if the Jew believes it or if the non-Jew believes in it. The non-Jew is afraid that the Jew is going to do witchcraft and is getting this symbolic sale just in order to do that. Okay, super interesting. We have to learn more about this witchcraft and what was going on, but maybe this reflects some things going on in Persia, where maybe the Jews had a reputation for witchcraft, or exactly what they were doing. But this just does show something about the suspicious nature of their relationship. All right, so that solves that problem, and now we're going to go into it further. Gufa. This is a Tosefta. Chatzero shel goy harehu kedir shel behema. Okay, there's a couple of difficult statements today about non-Jews, and this is one of them. So the courtyard of a non-Jew is like an animal pen. I don't know if this is meant to be derogatory, but rather it's a halachic status that you don't consider it a residence for the purpose of preventing someone from making an eruv. In other words, if it's just a pen, so it's not it's not called a residence. If it's not a residence, then it does not prevent other people from carrying there, right? Because it's just if an animal lives, if you have a horse stable there, the horses don't prevent anyone. They don't own ownership. They don't reside there. We don't consider that their residence a real residence, and therefore the rest of the Jews that live there can carry without a problem.
But his house? What about his house?
It's talking about his house, right?
They're calling his house or just his yard?
His
everything.
his house.
Oh, so the whole thing. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And therefore, you can go in and out. You don't have to worry about it. We're not considering it for halachic purposes. We're not considering him a resident. But if there's another Jew, there's two Jews, in other words, then they prohibit each other. They have to make an eruv. They have to share their meal, and that way they have to go into a partnership. All right. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omed L'olam Eno Aser Ad Shiyu Shnei Yisraelim Osrim Zeh Al Zeh. He says, as it says in the Mishnah, that has to be two Jews, two Jews prohibiting each other. In other words, if it's only one Jew and one non-Jew, that's okay. All right, Amar Mor. So that was a Tosefta. Now we're going to analyze further. Amar Mor, you just said that the residence of a non-Jew is not considered a residence for our purposes, so therefore it's allowed. You're allowed to carry there. You don't have to do anything. But in our Mishnah, we said that someone who lives with a non-Jew, he cannot carry. So that would imply that his residence is a residence. So now we have a contradiction between this Tosefta and our Mishnah. The answer is lakashya hadiite hadelete. One's talking about where he is when he is there, and another talking when he is not there. So when the non-Jew is present, then he prohibits the Jew. When the non-Jew is not present, his home, his empty home, is not considered anything. So that's what you referred to before. And so now this gives clarification that if his house is there and he is there, that is considered a residence. Okay, now what is in general the status of an empty house? If you say that it is an empty house is considered a house, then the non-Jew, whether he's there or not, should prohibit the Jews from carrying. And if an empty house is not considered a residence, then an empty Jewish house also should not be a problem. But that's universally accepted. That's not the halacha, right? An empty Jewish houses, if you're in Jerusalem and the Ir David area where, in the middle of the winter when there's all the Americans buy houses and nobody's there, you're the only one there, you still have to make an eruv with the empty residences if they're owned by Jews. So which way is it? In fact, it's not actually considered a residence, and that explains why if the non-Jew is not there, we don't have to worry about him because we don't consider any empty house to be a residence. So what's the problem if an empty Jewish house, Israel, the thing with the Jew is that we made a gezerah, empty house to a home where he's present. That you don't want to make we want to make a blanket rule, all Jewish homes, because maybe he'll be there, maybe he won't be there, always make an eruv. Okay, that's a good gezerah, not to get into trouble. But how can you not make a gezerah for a goy? Goy dechi ite gezerah shema yilmad mima'asav. Ki ite asar, ki lete la'asar. Oh, for a non-Jew, the whole reason that the rabbi said that you can't make an eruv with a non-Jew is because we don't want the Jews there to learn from his ways and be influenced and assimilate. And therefore, if he's there, then that's the problem. If he's not there, there's no problem that you're going to learn from his ways when he's not there. So there's no reason to make a gezerah. So Liba
Ali means it's owned by the goy, but he's not there. It doesn't mean
by the goy, but he's not there. So just his house being there is not going to cause any negative influence. Okay. La'asar. Hold on. Is that true? If he's not there, then you don't have to worry about it. And the Hatanan Hamaniach et beto v'halach lo lishpot b'yad acheret echad nochri v'echad Yisrael oser divrei Rabbi Meir. Mishnah says that if the residence is there, even if the person residing there is not, they still prohibit the other members from carrying unless they make an eruv.
Didn't we learn pages back that the guy makes it hefker? If he's not there, you have to assume he makes it hefker.
Yeah, yes, that's right. That's right. That's correct. But he has to do that. He has to make sure he does that. We can't assume.
No, we assumed he does it.
That was, it was talking about different cases. One is he had another house, another city. The other one where he's staying by his daughter-in-law, right? That we assume he's not going to come back. Yeah. So you have to figure out if where he is and whether he's going to come back. But the basic law is that it is a problem. So therefore, you see, even a non-Jew who's not residing there does cause a problem to everybody else. Hatam date beyom. Oh, when it says that's a problem, that's when it went on a day trip, and he's going to come back on that same day. Whereas when halacha that we said before here is talking about when he goes away for a long period. He went to Florida, he went camping for a few days, and so you don't have to worry about him coming back. And this was also a distinction between the Jew and non-Jew, right? Once a Jew leaves for Shabbat, you assume he's not going to come back on Shabbat. He's not going to travel, but a non-Jew can travel on Shabbat, so he may show up. Okay, so that solves that problem. And now we have a halacha l'maaseh. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel halacha k'Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says that one Jew and one non-Jew are okay, because it's very rare that one Jew and one non-Jew live together. So the rabbis did not make a whole gezerah in that case. So that's the halacha. Rav Huna, my minhag k'Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. He says it's not the halacha, but rather minhag. In other words, don't say this, don't teach this, but if someone comes to ask, okay, you could do it. There's even less that don't even say, but if you see someone doing it, you don't have to object to them doing it. This is very interesting, these three levels of Pasak Halacha. Okay, I think this is more relevant than we think. I think a lot of times as rabbis and poskim that, right, well, some things they publish and say you should do this. Some things are more private and only if someone asks, or they'll, they know that they even less, they just won't object, but that's not something that they would ever say publicly, maybe even not privately. Okay, good. And so now we're going to get into the whole section about teaching halacha l'maaseh, giving psak halacha, especially in front of one's rabbi. This is going to take us the whole next page. Amar le'Abaye l'Rav Yosef, Kaimalan, Mishnat Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Kav v'naki. This famous appears a number of times. Actually, Kav, Gematria has 102. And so some of the commentaries say there's 102 times when we have halacha like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But anyway, the Peshat is, it's simple and clear. In other words, he's clear and concise, and therefore we follow his opinion for halacha. Okay, so that's just adding to it. That is, we follow halacha, and it's always clear and concise. All right, so now that we mentioned that, now we get to this long section of Agadah. Is one allowed to give a ruling when his teacher is also present? This is a big problem. He says not even a simple question, because when Rav Chisda was asked about an egg in a kutach, the question is this considered meat and milk, putting an egg in a dairy dish? Obviously, it's not, right? No one thinks that an egg is considered meat. But even such a simple question, if people came and asked Rav Chisda, he would not answer the question. He said, go ask my teacher, Rav Huna. And so you see to what extent, even a simple black and white law, you're not allowed to say anything when one's teacher is present. This is very interesting. What about halacha that's like in Megillat Ta'anit, the list of all the days on which are happy days for Israel, and you cannot fast? This is a book that's written and mancha and published, right? This seems to be a technical term. Cham Fa'od writes about this. So in other words, it's published, therefore it's public. Everybody knows it. You can just go and read it. This seems to be a term, there's lots of books, and some books are canonized and some books are not canonized, and this is one that is there for everybody to see. So therefore, if someone comes to ask me, I could say, is Chanukah a happy day? It's right here, right? I'm not going against the authority of my teacher by teaching you something that's black and white, that's right there for everyone to see. So can I say that in front of my teacher? The answer is no. Even something so simple that's actually written and published, You still cannot, even just to read a halakha in front of one's rabbi is not allowed.
But this means in front, not if your rabbi's alive and so on and so forth.
Okay, so that's
And
a
especially in
good
the
question.
days when you learned in the rabbi's backyard with him, and someone comes to the rabbi's backyard and asks the rabbi and you answer, that's not nice.
Right. Okay, good. But that's what we're going to discuss now. Is it only in his presence or even when he's
Okay.
alive?
Oh, go.
So here we have some cases like maybe like what you said, that Rav Chisda would give rulings in Kafri when in Rav Huna's life, because it was not in his teacher's place. That's what you said, right? So that's permitted if you're not in the same city. Rav Hamnuna ore becharta de argez bishne de Rav Chisda. Right, this is going to the next generation now. Rav Chisda did in front of his teacher when his teacher was alive. Rav Hamnuna teaches when his teacher was alive because he's in a different city. So that seems to be okay. Ravina sar sakina bebavel. Ravina examined a knife for shechita when he was in Bavel. Rav Ashi is his teacher. Rav Ashi says, what are you doing? How could you check a knife and give a psak halacha that's kosher and here, right? I'm your teacher. You're not allowed. Says, oh, I have a precedent. We're not in the same town. We're both in Bavel. I was not in the same town as you. And so, right, Rav Hamnuna did it. You got this story wrong. This story that says he gave rulings, it should be he did not give rulings, even though he was in a different city. So there you go. Even in a different city, when your teacher's alive, you're not allowed to give rulings. They're very difficult to do, but you're going to have to travel to the other city every time to give a ruling. Well, apparently, Amale itmar orev itmar la orev. Ravina says that. Well, there's two different versions of it. Bishne de Rav Huna Rabbehu de la orev ve'orev bishne de Rav Chisda de tamid chaver di lehava ve'ana name tamid chaver de mor ana. Says actually there's two different stories. He would not teach in front while his teacher was alive, and that's Rav Huna. But he would teach, Rav Hamnuna would teach when Rav Chisda was alive, because Rav Chisda was his teacher colleague, right? He was a disciple colleague. Therefore, he was allowed to teach, not in the place, but while Rav Chisda was alive. And so now Ravina concludes and says, I am your disciple colleague. You're not my teacher. There seems to be some tension here between these, what they consider each other, and says, therefore, I am allowed. That's why I did it, even not in front of you, but I did it while you are alive. All right, good. So that gives us some clarity about your question. Amar Rava, Surba Rabbanan Chazeh leNafsheh. Rava said, Torah scholar, any Torah scholar can examine a knife for himself, right? If you want to do shechita, I'm doing in my backyard. I'm doing shechita. I want to prepare dinner, right? I don't have to go to the rabbi. I can decide a psak for my own self, not for other people, but yes, for myself. So one time, Ravina went on a trip to Mechoza, where's Rava's hometown, and he brought the knife, and the host brought the knife and says, "It's kosher." He says, don't ask me. Rava is the rabbi of this town, and you have to ask him. He's the greater sage. But Rava taught that you can use it for yourself. He says, no, I'm not slaughtering it for myself. I'm buying it from you. You're the host. I get maybe like it was an inn, kind of a restaurant, right? That's so the host, not a friend host, but a host that he's paying. And so he says, I'm buying it from you. I'm not actually slaughtering it for myself. And therefore, this is a halachic question that you need to go and check the knife with the Marad Atra here. And I cannot, this is not considered checking for myself. Okay, good. We have Siman, mnemonic for the next, Zila Lehanya Machlif Ika Ve'Yaakov. Okay. Rabbi Elazar meHagoronya v'Rab Abba bar Tachlifa. These two sages, Ikleu lebe Rab Acha bere de Rab Ika. They went to Rab Acha's house, be'atre de Rab Acha bar Yaakov. Okay, so let's not get confused. They're at the home of Rab Acha bere de Rab Ika, but they're in the town where the head rabbi is Rab Acha bar Yaakov. So now the host who owns the home there, he wanted to slaughter a third-born calf. Third-born is considered the best tasting. It's after the mother is already a little bit mature, and this is the best meat. So he brought a knife and showed it to his guests, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Abba. Amar lehu Rab Acha bar Tachlifa. All right, so one of the guests, Rab Abba, says, La lechush le lesaba. So what about the elder in the town? Right, this is the town of Rab Acha, of Rab Acha bar Yaakov. Shouldn't you go and show it to him? The host says, Amar lehu Rabbi Elazar ben Hagronya, Hachi Amar Rabba, Somer Rabbanan chazel nafsheh. Rabba said that a rabbi can decide for himself. And this is my house. I'm doing the slaughtering. I'm going to do it for myself. Chazeh v'yanash Rabbi Elazar Mahagronya. So he did it himself, but he was punished for that. So this is strange. Why? Why was he punished? He followed the halacha exactly as Rava said. What did he do wrong? There it's different because they mentioned the name of the Marad Atra Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Already, since he brought him up and said, should we show him? Once you bring up his name and ask the question, should we show him? Then to say no is disrespectful. If it doesn't ask the question at all, then it would not show any disrespect. I'm the rabbi, it's my house, I'm doing it for myself. But if you kind of bring it up and say, should we ask? And then say, no, we're not going to ask, then that shows disrespect. Okay, very, very interesting. Or another answer, Shane Rab Acha bar Yaakov de Muflag. Rab Acha bar Yaakov, who was a Madatra, he was very illustrious. He was a real elder, very wise, and so more than just a regular sage, you have to go and show him that honor and show him the knife. And okay, I don't know when you show him the knife if you have to invite him too, but why not? Okay, Amar Rava lafrushe me'isura. Afil befanav shapir dameh. Okay, so here's an exception. If you see someone violating a prohibition, then you can go, even if your rabbi's right there, and stop him. Right? You see someone eating something not kosher, you go and say, "Hey, that's not kosher. You're not allowed to do that." And you don't have to give any honor and wait for your teacher to realize and say something. Okay, so that's more important. Rabina havayateb kamed Rab Asher. Again, we had this pair before. Ravina is in front of his teacher, colleague teacher. Rav Asher Chazielu Gabra Daka Asar lehamre besinta beshabeta. He saw someone tying his hamor, his donkey, to a tree, and you're not allowed to use a tree on Shabbat. So he yells at him, says, "Hey, stop doing that." The man didn't care. He kept tying his animal. I'm going to excommunicate you. So look at that. It's right. So here, Ravina, the student is giving halacha. He's just giving someone excommunication, even though Rav Asher is right there. Afterwards, Ravina says, Rav Asher, my teacher, was I irreverent towards you in any way? Because I went and I did all this, and I didn't consult you first, and I didn't give you. You should have done it. Says, no, you don't have to go ask any questions. You don't have to ask for advice when it comes to God's honor. Right, making sure that someone does not sin and make Chil Hashem is more important than giving honor to.
Wait. That's not what he did. Is Chil Hashem because tying.
Tying. That's
Chilul Hashem?
Chilul Shabbat. So that's in
God's
law.
Chilul Hashem. Chilul Hashem's altogether different.
All right,
He's not doing anything for people to come and say, look how evil these Jews are, how bad,
that's
how
the way we use it. That's the way we usually use it, right? But really, Chilul Hashem is anything that's holy that you make sacred.
Hashem. Oh, take the words to make, okay.
Right, this is a holy day. And
okay.
Okay. Amar Rava befanav asur v'chayav mita. Okay, now back in general, if you do it in front of you, if you say something in front of your teacher, then you'd be chayav mita. However, if you say a halachic ruling while your teacher is alive, but not in front of him, it's still not allowed, but that would not require the death penalty. Okay, that's so a bunch. There's a lot of rulings of Rava. This is already like the third ruling where he's giving an exception here. Hold on, is that true? That if it's not in front of your teacher's presence, then you don't get the death penalty? We're gonna bring a baraita which shows that you do get the death penalty even not in front of your teacher. It's a long baraita, and the proof only comes at the end. So let's just see all the examples. Hatanya, Rabbi Eliezer lo metu bnei Aaron ad shehudu halacha b'fnei Moshe Rabban. Good. My darush v'natanu bnei Aaron hakohen esh al hamizbeach. So the children of the two sons of Aaron died because they gave a halacha in front of Moshe. What did they do? They brought a fire themselves because they said, look at the pasuk. It says the children of Aaron should bring a fire. So I said, even though there's the miraculous fire that comes down, the pasuk says we have to bring a fire. So they did that, and they decided that in front of Moshe. So they died, but that was right in front of him. So this is not the question. ותמיד אחד היה לרבי אליעזר שהורה בהלכה בפניו. אמר רבי אליעזר עמה שלום, טמא אני אם יוסי זה שנתו ולא הוסי שנתו. And there you go. He's another student and he did not complete his year. The wife said, well, how did you know that he's not gonna stay alive the whole year?
ירמיהו. לא נביא אנוכי ולא בן נביא אנוכי.
Right.
That's ירמיהו.
ולא בן נביא אנוכי, אלא כך מקובלני כל המורה הלכה בפני רבו, חייב מיתה. Okay, so this actually sounds like he was in front of him, בפניו. So this is not the question yet, but here's the question. אמר רבא בר חנא, אמר רבי יוחנן, אותו תלמיד יהודה בן גוריה שמו, והיה רחוק ממנו 3 פרסאות. So the question comes not from the Braita, but from Rabbi Yochanan's statement about the Braita, that this student, here's his name, and he wasn't even in front of him. He wasn't in the same place, but rather he was far away. And yet, even though he said halacha, far away, Rabbi Eliezer got wind of it, and even that is chayav mitah. So this is a challenge to Rava, who said that if it's not in the same place, then it's asur banat chayav mitah. This student got chayav mitah. So befanav hava, and doesn't he say it was far away? Oh no, sorry. The answer is befanav hava. He was actually in his place. He gave the halachic ruling in his presence, and that's why he died. Hold on, what do you mean he's in his presence? Rabbi Yochanan says he was 3 parsaot away. L'ta'amich shemo v'shem aviv lama ela shelo tomar mashal haya. Rather, when it says he was 3 away, that means he lived there. He lived far away. But at that moment that he gave the halacha l'maaseh, he was in his presence. Also, why bother telling me that he lived 3 parasot away? Oh, because why I say his name and name of his father? That you shouldn't say this is just a fake story, just a parable. It's a real story. That's why I told you his name, his place, his address, right? But at the time they gave the ruling, he was in his presence. And so that answers a question on Rava, and we can establish that not in the rabbi's presence is asur, but without the punishment. Okay. Amar B'chia, bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, kol hamoreh halacha b'fnei rabo ra'ui lahakisho nachash. Someone who teaches in front of his teacher, gives a ruling in front of his teacher, should be bitten by a snake. Shneimar, and Elihu ben Barcheel habozi. Vayomar is from Iyov. Sa'ir ani layamim. He says, I am young in age. Al ken zachalti. Therefore, I am afraid to give an opinion, right? Maybe speaking to Iyov. I'm younger than you. I'm not going to give my opinion. Well, he does give his opinion, but okay. He says he's not going to. Uchtiv im hamad zochale afar. And we're making a connection with these words, zachalti and zochale afar.
These are 2 homonyms, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so the venom of those that crawl, so therefore I am not going to give my opinion because I am afraid of the zochale, these snakes.
Ricky, I have to make a quick phone call. Okay. Excuse.
Zeiri amar Rabbi Chanina nikra chotesh ne'emar belebi safanti imratecha lema'an lo echayta lach. Someone who teaches in front of his teacher is called a sinner, as it says in Tehillim, that your word I hid in my heart. Why did I hide the word? In other words, I didn't give the Pesach Halacha out loud. I kept it to myself so that I would not be a sinner. Therefore, if one doesn't do that and says the halacha, that person is a sinner. Since you mentioned this pasuk in Tehillim, we have a contradiction. On the one hand, he says, I'm going to keep it to myself. But another pasuk in Tehillim says, I'm going to teach righteousness in front of everyone. I'm going to teach halacha in front of everybody. So which one is it? Lakasha, kam izman she'ira haya'ari kayam, kam izman she'en ira haya'ari kayam. Both of them were said by David. David's teacher, the Kohen who was around in his time, was Ira Hayari. So when Ira Hayari, his teacher, was around, David HaMelech did not teach. But when he was no longer around, when he was not around, then when he was no longer alive, then David would teach. So that's the two Pesukim. We're talking about different times of his life. Okay, this is now a tangent. Now that we mentioned David and the Kohen, Ira Ya'ari, we're going to talk a little bit more about them. If you give all of your gifts, all of your tirumah to one Kohen, chala, everything else, then you're bringing your famine to the world. There's a lot of Kohanim, they all need. So you're going to make one Kohen very rich, and the other ones are going to starve. Shne'emar, Ira Ya'ari haya Kohen le David. The David hu dava Kohen lechul al mala. What do you mean he was a Kohen for David? He was a Kohen. Kohen is for everybody, but rather he was David's designated Kohen. David gave all of his gifts to him, and that would be a lot of gifts, and he didn't give to other people, and because of that, he was punished. That caused a famine. ויאמר אלעזר הכהן אל אנשי הסבה, אף אגב דאמר להו, לאחי אבא סיבה ואותי לא סיבה, אפילו אחי היא עניש. Okay, now back to our topic. Someone who rules in front of teacher's presence is going to be demoted from his position. And we see that Elazar goes and tells the people, and right as after the battle with Midian, right, Moshe doesn't teach them all the laws of how to kosher the pots and pans, but rather Elazar goes and teaches them the laws. Why is he teaching in front of Moshe? And so even though he said, these are not my teachings, he says it in the name of Moshe, still he gets demoted. This is interesting because there's another explanation of this that the Midrash says. Why didn't Moshe teach? Because he got angry and he gave a wrong directive to the... Yeah, no, he got angry and he told the generals to go kill the woman and children, right? And so because he got angry, anytime you get angry, you make a mistake. Because Moshe told them that wrongly, so then he was in penalty box, and that's why Elazar was teaching after that. Okay, that's a different midrash, but over here it's actually saying Moshe should have, and Elazar got up and taught in front of his master, and he shouldn't have. So what's his punishment? Although it says that later Yoshua is going to ask questions to Elazar, he's going to be the Kohen. But we never find that Yoshua ever actually engages Elazar. So although Elazar should have been the chief in the time of Yoshua, he never actually, he's demoted and never gets to act in that position. Amar Rabbi Levi, kol demotiv mila kamed Rabbi Azel lish'ol belo valad. Someone who teaches in front of his teacher gives a ruling in front of a teacher will die childless. Shenemar vayan Yoshua bin Nun mesharet Moshe bechorav vayomar Adoni Moshe kelaem. Oh, we see this. This is when Eldad uMedad were continuing to prophesy. Right, and Yoshua comes and says, Moshe, go and go destroy them. Who's Yoshua to go and tell Moshe what the halacha is? And because of that, non beno Yoshua beno. In Divrei Yamim, it says non. That says Yoshua is bin nun, and that's it. There's no Yoshua is not mentioned that he has any children.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty strong.
Wow.
Finny says non, not noon here.
Yeah.
Pronunciation. This tradition is about Yoshua, is different from another one of why he died childless. One time he was responsible for preventing the nation from being with their wives. When did that happen? So when in famous scene, Yeshua sees this angel with a sword over him. He says, "Who are you? Are you my enemy? Are you my friend?" And the angel says, "I am I'm head of the God's hosts, and now I came to rebuke you." Atabati, that's the key words. אמר לו, אמש ביטלתם תמיד של בן 40, ועכשיו ביטלתם תלמוד תורה. Yesterday you didn't do the korbanot. Why? You were engaged in war. And now it's nighttime, so you're not fighting, and you're not learning Torah. So look, you're not doing what you're supposed to. You're focused on war too much and not fulfilling mitzvot. Aleze mehen bata. So Yeshua says, which one in particular am I being punished for not bringing korbanot or for not learning Torah? And the answer is, atabati, I came now, meaning at night. So in other words, more important, worse than not doing korbanot is the fact that you are not learning Torah. Miyad vayelech Yeshua b'layla hu betoch ha'emek. And so, even though it says miyad, this is actually after this is in the fight with Ai. And it says he went that night, בתוך העמק. He went into the valley. ואמר רבי יוחנן מלמד שהלך בעומקה של תורה, של הלכה. We learn this as a mashal, not that he went actually into a valley, but rather went into the depths of the halacha, and so he spent that whole night studying in order to make up for that sin.
Ricky, I have an emergency. I have to go.
Okay.
I have to leave.
וגמירי, דכל זמן שארון ושכינה שרויין שלא במקומן, אסורין בתשמיש המיטה. Now they had the Aron with them. They bring the Aron into battle whenever they're going. And so, since the Aron was with them, the nation was not allowed to engage in relations. And so, Yehoshua, because he was so focused on war, and he was prolonging it, and therefore, the Aron had to stay with them longer, and they were not able to do Peri Avribya, and that is the reason why he was punished. So that's the second explanation. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar in ya mishemeh derav gadol Talmud Torah yoter mahakrabat timidin tamale ata bati. Right, very interesting. We learn from here another side point that Talmud Torah is more important than bringing sacrifices, because although Yeshua neglected both, the angel said the main thing that you're going to be punished for is neglecting Torah study, not the sacrifices. It makes sense that the rabbis would be saying this after the destruction of Bet HaMikdash, when it was Talmud Torah, that was their main form of worship, and they no longer had korbanot. Amar Rav Berona Amar Rav Kol Hayashin Bekil'a Sheish V'Ishto Sheruyin Ba Allah VaKatuv Omer Neshe Ami Tegarashun Mibet Ta'anugeha. Since we mentioned the theme that Yeshua prevented husbands and wives from being with each other. So we mentioned another halacha in that regard. If someone sleeps over in a room where husband and wife are sleeping, so then they're not going to be able to be with each other. So the guest there is preventing them from being with each other. And so based on that, we apply the pasuk from Micha, the women of my people you cast from their pleasant houses. It's that guy's fault. You shouldn't. You should make sure that there's a separate bedroom or sleep somewhere else, and don't sleep in a room with a couple. And Rabbi Yosef says, even if they're nida and they're not going to be together anyway, still, it's not nice. You should give couples privacy. It's not proper to be there with them. Rava says, what are you talking about? If they're nida, then the guest is doing a mitzvah. He's able to go, he's going to watch them and make sure that they won't sin and be with each other. So that should be a positive thing. No, we reject that. Hold on, because we rely on the guest to separate them from each other. No, we don't rely on them until now. Who was protecting them? Rather, we trust that a husband and wife will keep the laws of nidah. They don't need a guest to make sure. Rather, the guest is more of a nuisance, and a guest should always respect the privacy of a couple, whether they are nidah or not. And that concludes the issue, the subject of giving teachings, giving rulings before one's master. And next we go back to the halacha of Eruvin, and we will continue that next time.